Hold on, guys. Good afternoon. Welcome back to United View. Hope everyone is doing very well. Some breaking news coming in the last couple of minutes. I haven't got a pen. I've always liked it. There you go. Got my pen next to me. Some breaking news coming in the last couple of minutes regarding Jadon Sancho. Yet another Manchester United statement. Another day, another afternoon, and another Manchester United statement. I think at the moment Statement FC is trending, rightfully so, I suppose, because another statement has been released, and this time it's about Jadon Sancho and his immediate future. The first real official comments on the fallout of, I don't know, is it called Statement Gate? I don't really know what it's called. Nevertheless, United have indeed released a statement. We'll read it to you, we'll react to it, and it could be, some might look at it as the beginning of the end, some might look at it as the beginning of sort of the recovery step for Jadon Sancho to win back the Manchester United manager. Depends how you're going to look at it. The statement reads as follows. It's a very, very, very short one. It was released 30 minutes ago, exactly 31 minutes ago at the time of doing this, and it says, and I quote, Jadon Sancho will remain on a personal training program away from the first team group pending resolution of a squad discipline issue, end quote. That's it. That's all it says. Once again, Jadon Sancho will remain on a personal training program away from the first team group, pending resolution of a squad discipline issue. Now, we do know, of course, that Jadon Sancho is at Carrington today. There have been photographs of him arriving, not like Anthony Martial arriving at 9 o'clock, only to find out that training was in the afternoon, so turning around and then leaving very quickly and coming back later on. So it would appear that Sancho, I mean, it's quite vague, obviously. And look, I'm not going to be here for an hour talking about all that kind of stuff, talking, you know, what does this word mean? What does that word mean? We're not going to do a thematic analysis or anything like that. But it's quite vague and probably purposefully so, really, by Manchester United there. My interpretation of it, shall we say, was my interpretation of it is that he's probably training with either the under-23s, the reserves, the kids, whatever you want to call them, or he's literally on his own at Carrington doing his work. A bit like how last season there were those players, a bit like, you know, your Phil Joneses or your others that were like, well, they're there. You know, in the same way that I suppose that throughout the summer, like Eric Bailly and Alex Telles and others, they were there. They weren't training with the first team squad, but they were there. They were doing their work. That's kind of the situation. That's kind of the territory that Jadon Sancho now finds himself in, essentially, is that he's not part of the first team squad for now. And it's pending this resolution of a squad discipline issue, which, again, I found that to be quite curious as well. First of all, that this issue is not resolved. You know, one had hoped that the statement that Sancho put out there was, nearly a couple of weeks ago at this point, and I understand it's been an international break, not everyone's been in Carrington. There was a bit of a discrepancy of like the timeline of Ten Hag and Sancho holding face-to-face talks. That happened on Monday, even though Jadon Sancho was in New York, because you could tell by the pictures of him being in New York, so I wasn't really too sure about that. But clearly this issue is not resolved. It's not like with Cristiano Ronaldo, shall we say, when he did his walkout against Spurs, and it was then United put out a statement saying that he was going to be, you know, he'd been punished and he wouldn't be available for the Chelsea game. This seems quite indefinite, doesn't it? You know, this seems quite. We're not putting a timeline on it. We don't know when he's going to be back. We don't know when this thing is going to be resolved, which does speak to, like Flex and myself spoke about this morning, it speaks to maybe bigger issues here, in that it was reported that, I think it was from Sammy Mockable from the Daily Mail, that John Murtough and to a lesser extent Richard Arnold were having to kind of intervene, or were hoping to sort of mediate these issues between Erik ten Hag and Jadon Sancho, or these sort of wider problems, I suppose, and they were trying to resolve this. And maybe that's because, and this is kind of what I'd speculated about previously, that maybe Erik ten Hag's just washed his hands of it. This guy won't play for me again. After what he did and what he posted on social media, I will not pick him anymore. He can go train with the reserves. I don't know. That I'm speculating on that. But for Jadon Sancho's future, certainly, it doesn't look good, in my opinion. And actually, I'll put a poll in the chat whilst we're live here briefly, saying, you know, is this the beginning of the end? Let me know your thoughts in the live chat. We'll get your comments up on the screen as to what you made of that statement, what you make of this step. I mean, obviously, I really didn't expect him to be involved this weekend. It's far too soon. He has to stamp his authority on it, Erik ten Hag. You can't have a player come out and usurp his authority by posting the statement on social media. I know that Sancho has since deleted the tweet that was pinned for like a week or so, but that's not enough. There still has to be consequences for your actions, and I didn't expect him to be involved with Brighton. I did expect United. I wasn't sure if United were going to release a statement, but thinking about it historically, well, recently, of course they've been releasing statements, but even if you look at how they handled sort of Ronaldo last season, they released a statement on a Thursday. It's always those Thursdays, KG, on the Thursday, and it gives the manager a sort of a comfort blanket going into the press conference tomorrow, because when Erik ten Hag is asked about Jadon Sancho tomorrow, what is he going to say? He's going to say the club put out a statement, and that's all I've got to say about it. It gives Erik ten Hag, some ammunition going into that press conference, essentially. So it kind of softens the blow. It's not as if Erik ten Hag's going to go in there now. It'll still be peppered with the questions about Jadon Sancho, but he's got his answer. His answer is, we released a statement. That's all my comment on the matter. That's all he's going to say tomorrow, which will make the Sancho issue quite boring in the press conference if you're looking for some juicy gossip and details and all that kind of stuff. But he's just going to keep referring to the statement. So I suppose we just shouldn't be too shocked that they have indeed released a statement, but I guess the kind of vagueness and the indefiniteness of it implies that this is an issue that might not get resolved for a while, or certainly not in the coming days. Maybe next week, maybe the week after that, but it does appear that he might be on his own for a little while now. Right, the poll I was going to say is this the beginning of the end for Jadon Sancho at Manchester United? There you go. Poll is in the chat, and I was pleased I spelled beginning correct first time. So always a challenge. I always struggle with those kind of ones. What are people saying in the chat as we go through this? Matt Wick says, I've said this a bunch of times since it's come out, but your authority should be self-evident. Some shite like this shouldn't leave a dent. So you're suggesting that Ten Hag should do nothing, or the fact that this has happened in the first place implies that you don't have authority? Because look, you can be an authoritarian in any job, and there can always be people that act out of line, and it's just about reminding people, isn't it? If that's what they do, you go, right, they're done, they don't come back, or they're punished. And I think that what has been evident over the international break, certainly, through all of the reporting from the piece that was written by The Athletic. I saw Mike Keegan did a Q&A with the Daily Mail yesterday, and he actually said, which I found quite curious, he said that he had heard that Jadon Sancho was due to start against Spurs, that first away game, the second game of the season. He was due to start that game, Jadon Sancho, and he was dropped to the bench because of disciplinary issues or something. There was some kind of issue internally which had led to Erik ten Hag dropping him to the bench. And a bit like Adam Crafton, when he had written that piece about United and the handling of the Greenwood situation, Mike Keegan reached out to Manchester United and said, hey, I've heard this, or my sources are telling me that Jadon Sancho was actually due to start against Spurs and he was dropped to the bench because of disciplinary issues. Is that true? And the club denied it, and so Mike Keegan didn't write it, he said. But now it looks like actually there might have been a bit more truth to that one than United led on, which again is quite curious, because I have seen those people say, why is this all coming out now? This feels very, coincidental that these stories are coming out. And I would liken it to probably a lot of people in the media or a lot of journalists might have heard rumblings, might have heard rumours for a while, or might have heard stories, but they were unsubstantiated. Or you go, quite heavy sort of, they're quite heavy accusations, or and again, you have to be careful because it's quite sort of character assassinating. This person doesn't show up on time, they're sluggish in training, they're not happy with the way they're training, etc., etc. And there needs to be a bit more sort of weight to it. Then after this incident has happened and it's blown up in the way that it's blown up, they then double down on those sources and they then reach out to those people again and say, hey, what was that story you told me again? Or what was that thing you were saying the other day? Or what was that thing when you said that Sancho was going to start against? What was that all about? And then other people that might be inside the club teammates or friends of friends or friends, cousins, sisters, friends, boyfriends, partner, whatever, boyfriend's partner, then might start talking to people going, yeah, I am really sick of this as well. I've been frustrated with this too. So it's just blown up into a real ugly situation. Yet another really, really ugly and frustrating situation. And I mentioned at the beginning that Statement FC is trending on social media, and rightfully so. We do have more statements out this year and season than points on the board or than victories. And it just goes to show it just adds to the general bonfire that is Manchester United at the moment. But what I will say, and this is the same situation in general as like the Cristiano Ronaldo situation last year, whereby United have to get it right. We have had in the last decade such a problem with people with player power and with players ultimately having more power than the managers or the sort of people that are picking the team and what have you. And just how United got it right, whether you like it or not, with the Cristiano Ronaldo situation, they backed the manager in that instance. And they've got to make sure that they back the manager in this instance as well. Now, I know the response is what people will say. They'll go, but what if Jadon Sancho's right that Erik ten Hag had shown favouritism to Antony and he'd been picking Antony when Antony hadn't been playing well? And I think there is merit in that. Sancho might believe, hey, I feel like I'm play better than that guy. Why don't I get a shot? Why don't I get a run of games, whatever? But people got to understand, that's the manager's prerogative. If you're the manager of Manchester United, it's your job, it's your role to pick the team, to train the team. If you believe that person is better than that person, or you have more faith in this person over that person, that's your right as a manager. And a player can call it out, but you've also got to know that if you call it out, you're probably not going to get picked, and you probably won't be long at the club either. That's just how football works. Like that is just how football works. And if Erik ten Hag believes that Jadon Sancho's training performance wasn't up to standard, therefore he didn't pick him, again, that's his right. That's his job. And now I look at this issue that, first of all, he doesn't get picked for the Arsenal game in terms of being in the squad because Erik ten Hag believes that his training wasn't up to standard. And even that is still somewhat vague because Ten Hag himself was vague about what he said in that press conference. He kept that one vague. So he didn't say in particular, he's just training rubbish. It might be a case of he was late. It might be a case of he missed one training session. We don't know the actual specifics of it. It's just a training performance. That's all he said. But with that being said, it's the manager's right to do that. And that's one issue. And then now, on top of that, Sancho came out and released a statement, and it's exacerbated the issue. And clearly, by that statement, they're saying it's pending the resolution. So if it's pending, it's not complete. It's not resolved just yet. So it looks like this one's going to take more time to get resolved as well. And until it is, he's going to be, as I mentioned, like Eric Bailly was, like Tellez was, like I guess Donny was in the later part of the transfer window, where they're there. He's at Carrington today. He might be doing gym work, or he might be on the grass way away from the first team, but he's not involved in first team plans. And we don't know how long that's going to go on for. We don't know what it's going to take for him to be integrated back into the team, whether that's a public apology. Again, he's taken the tweet down. And it might have been the last straw for Erik ten Hag. It really might have. It might have just been, that's it. I've been struggling with this guy. I've been trying to get a reaction out of him. I've been trying to talk to him about timekeeping or what have you, and it's just not working out. And then once he posted the thing on social media, he might be like, right, you're not playing for me again. I mean, it's quite curious actually as well that Laurie Whitwell just writes recently regarding this statement. He says, another moment of authority for Erik ten Hag. whose attempts to get Jadon Sancho following squad discipline stretched back to last season. Timekeeping a persistent issue, also training levels. Sancho flew to New York rather than entertain Saudi offers. They did say that Sancho sort of declined the Saudi offers. Also, it must be stressed too that Man United were looking for sort of a £50 million sort of guarantee in addition to the loan that was possibly put there by Al Ettifaq. So, of course, that one didn't happen. But also, it looked like the player turned that one down as well. So, it looks like there's still this disconnect between the player and the manager, and this one isn't resolved just yet. We've got a super chat here from, let me get this up in front of me. Matafalu says, you genuinely believe that Sancho can't be right? I did not say that. This is what's crazy. I literally said, right, Jadon Sancho, he might be valid in his frustration that Antony got picked over him continuously. And he might be frustrated that Antony got picked over him all the time when Antony wasn't playing well. I've sat here and gone on streams like this and said, hey, why doesn't Jadon Sancho start over Antony when Antony's not playing well? But first of all, I would say we don't know the whole situation, because clearly we didn't know the whole situation about that. And two, that's the manager's right. The manager picks the team. The manager picks who he thinks is going to be the best performing team, that is going to pick the 11 players that's going to get the victory and the 11 players that he can trust. If he's seen situations where he perceives that Jadon Sancho is showing up late or he's not training the way that he's training, he goes, well, I don't think I can trust him. You know, that's part of it. Jadon Sancho, you know, and there'll be people within the squad. Absolutely, there'll be people that are within the squad that are friends of Jadon Sancho. They'll be like, "Oh, mate, you're being treated really badly. I think it's ridiculous." But at the same time, I would say to Jadon Sancho again, if any of this timekeeping stuff is true, that you can't talk about favoritism if you're going to be late all the time. That's ridiculous. If and it's a big if, because I always say if with stuff like that, because they're quite heavy things to put a player when you lack professionalism. But if the reports were true that he was having to be set, call times an hour before everyone else just to show up on time, and that still wasn't working. That still wasn't working. And you could say that you might be, talent, you're better than Antony. But if you can't show up on training on time, I can't pick you. Like, that's it. Any other job, you'd get the sack if you continuously did that. Any other job wouldn't give you an hour earlier call time. They wouldn't. This is crazy stuff. Really, really crazy stuff. So he can be right in that, I feel like this guy's getting preferential treatment. But then you've also got to look internally as well and saying, am I really helping myself in this situation? And I go back to his original statement that he put out, Jadon Sancho, when he said that he was being scapegoated. I don't think anyone was scapegoating Jadon Sancho for the loss against Arsenal. I don't think so. And again, if some of those reports about him showing up late and the lack of professionalism or sluggishness in training are true, then he's scapegoating himself, because it would appear that he's the one holding himself back. I looked at, I think it was a quote from Ange Postecoglou, wasn't it, about Basuma. And he said after a training session, he pulled him to one side, said, you can be a leader. And I think he said that he was late to a training session after that. And he had a word with him, and he was never late again. And, I struggle to look past an issue. I struggle to look past how the manager doesn't have total authority in this situation. If the manager doesn't rate a player, it's his right not to pick him. If a player comes out to, usurp the manager's authority on social media, the manager's got the right to, again, not pick him. not pick him again. That's why I go back to that original Sancho statement and saying, what was that going to achieve? Nothing really. It was only going to make things worse, because you're going to put out that statement and suddenly you're going to be back in the team. I don't think so. Obviously, couldn't envisage the stuff that's been going on now with Antony, but it was from the get-go, that was a bad decision to make. And if people around him should have said, hey, sit on this one. If you've got grievances, go to the people at the club. If you've got grievances, go to the manager. If you've got grievances, force a move, Force a move. There was still time. Even that Saudi move, he could have forced it through, but he didn't. So now we're into a situation where windows are shut. He's training away from the first team. We don't know how long. And honestly, it might be the beginning of the end. Put it this way: if I disappear, right, and then one of the morning shows, Morning View Flex comes on, and some people in the comments go, "Where's Owen?" And Flex goes, Owen just, was busy today or whatever. Or Owen was ill today. He couldn't be here. And I go on Twitter straight afterwards going, I'm not ill. I think I'm ready to go. I just haven't been used. It's a disgrace. I wouldn't appear again because this is the boss. You don't just undercut the boss and basically say the boss is a liar. It doesn't work like that. And in the same way that if Flex one day says to me, Owen, I don't want you to be on all of these shows anymore, or on certain shows anymore. It's his channel. It's Ten Hag's team. He's the boss. That's how life works. That's how football works. And that's not to say that some of the grievances Jadon Sancho has aren't totally valid, because some of them might be. Again, we don't see everything. We don't see what goes on behind closed doors. But call me crazy, call me old-fashioned. It's the manager's job to pick the team. And the manager should have that right. The moment he doesn't, then we're not in the realm of football. We're not in the realm of football, anymore, really, are we? So that's kind of the situation. So to Metalifu, you genuinely can't believe that Sancho can't be right. I don't think he's right. I didn't think he was right to put out that statement because I didn't think that was the right call. He might be right with some of his concerns, but look where it's got him now. It's got him even further away from playing. Had he not put out that statement, he'd have probably done a week of training. He'd have definitely, I'd say minimum, been in the squad against Brighton. Might not have started, but now it's got even bigger, The poll in the chat has been in there for nearly 15 minutes, nearly 700 votes. And the question was, is this the beginning of the end for Jadon Sancho at Manchester United? And the majority are saying yes. 82% of you say yes, it is the beginning of the end. Or over 700 votes now, saying it's the beginning of the end. Now, that's not to say that he can't, come back from this, because he can. But it's going to be a long, tough road. And like I said this morning, and this is where I feel it is. I don't know. This isn't scoops. This isn't sources or anything like that. This is where I feel it is. I feel like this might be a situation of, if all of those reports are accurate and some of those issues have been bubbling over for Ten Hag's tenure, really. By all accounts, they predate Ten Hag's tenure because there's similar issues at Borussia Dortmund. But whilst Ten Hag's been there have been these issues. And Ten Hag feels, according to some reports as well, that he had helped, he had helped him last season, or he had gone above and beyond to try and help Jadon Sancho last season. And then with the issues that sort of bled over into this season and dropping him from the Arsenal squad, that might have been the last straw for him with regards to Jadon Sancho. It really might have. And Ten Hag might have taken a step back and said, this whole situation is ridiculous. Because it is, really. Take a step back. Because United fans, because this is kind of commonplace at this point, statements, FC and all this kind of stuff, take a step back. This situation is crazy. It really is. You've got, a player that's not training well enough, and turns out it might be a lot more than that. It might have been a longer period of that. The manager exercises his right not to pick him in the squad. The player then comes out on social media and says, that's bullshit, paraphrasing, obviously, while saying he respects the manager's decision, meanwhile. And then we hear just sort of stories from the past for an international break, and now he's training away from the team, and people are sort of going, has Ten Hag made the right decision here? This is nuts. And this is just another day at Manchester United, isn't it? And so now the question would be, previously my sort of prediction was that Sancho wouldn't play on Saturday, which obviously he won't now, but I thought maybe he might be back in the squad for the Bayern Munich game. I think there's no chance. There's no chance he'll be involved with Bayern Munich now. What are they going to do? Release another statement in a few days' time? Unless tomorrow in the press conference Ten Hag does expand on it a little bit more and says, he'll be back training with the first team next week or something like that. Or maybe there's a stalemate in this, and and Ten Hag wants him nowhere near the squad, and we know that Ten Hag can be stubborn, and if he's being stubborn about that, then there might be no way back for Jadon Sancho. It literally might be a situation where this guy's training on his own individually until January, and then he'll be off. Maybe the mindset is, well, it's not that far away. What's that, a few months? It's midway through September. October, November, December. Get to January. That might be the mindset now with regards to Jadon Sancho. Or there is resolution fairly quickly in the next couple of weeks. Jadon Sancho can come back. But even if he comes back, and this is part of the problem too, he's on a very, very, he's on a very fine margin, isn't he, when he comes back? Like, it'll be difficult to get over all of this. It'll be very difficult to get past this. And if there's one more sort of infraction in the eyes of Erik ten Hag, that would be it anyway. And then people would say, why did you bring him back in the first place? And I go back to the sort of catalyst for this, of Erik ten Hag being asked the question in the press conference, because I think that one's kind of been lost over the last couple of weeks. While it serves Erik ten Hag right for throwing him under the bus, go back and read that statement, and go back and watch the answer too, because that's important. Context is key. He didn't throw Jadon Sancho under the bus. He just literally said why he didn't pick him, and he just said, I've got a lot of options and I pick who's in the squad based on training performance. And it's just led to like that. There really was not that much wrong with it. There have been far worse said by managers about their players, even at this club, like with the likes of Jose Mourinho. Look how he spoke about like Luke Shaw in press conferences, saying that he had to be his brain or something like that on the pitch. So it is a messy situation. It doesn't look like it's going to be resolved in the immediate future. If you are just joining us once again, the statement from Manchester United, a very short one, is as follows, saying, quote, Jadon Sancho will remain on a personal training program away from the first team group, pending resolution of a squad discipline issue. Which is quite interesting. Again, they say a squad discipline issue, not a player discipline issue or anything like that. Because also as well, what's the reaction internally from the squad? There might be some people in the squad that are just like, man, if this guy's back in training on Thursday, I don't know. We don't know the reaction internally either. And Deal with a super chat says, Sancho let himself down. The way I read Ten Hag's response was that 6 players trained better than Sancho. Never about mad discipline. Well, I still think it's, like I said, if some of those reports are even partially accurate about the stuff like the timekeeping, or that the call time one is just wild to me. That would even be a thing, about setting someone, okay, training's at 9, so Jadon, you get here 8, just so he'd get there for 9. Bear in mind, so he wouldn't even get there at 8, just so you'd get there for 9. That's nuts. That is wild. How many likes are we currently on? We're nearly at 1,500 people watching. Less than 200 likes. Less than 200 likes. If you haven't already, click the like button. Be sure to subscribe as well, bottom right-hand corner. If you haven't already, by the way, because the Tactical View did come out about an hour and a half ago, something like that, but obviously then the Sancho statement came out too, so I went live with that. So if you haven't already, check out the Tactical View. Cam has provided a tactical analysis of our newest striker signing, Rasmus Højlund. So if you want to check out what Højlund's going to offer, how it's going to change the way we play, how we're going to adapt to Højlund, how he's going to benefit us, you can check that out. Cam does an excellent job as always. You can also check out the Morning View, Flex and myself breaking down the topics this morning too. What else is on tap? Yes, the preview is coming as well. Flex speaking to a Brighton fan ahead of the game on Saturday. 3 p.m. kickoff, not on TV. Honestly, the 3 p.m. blackout, I can't stand. It really can't. It's an outdated, old rule. And here in the UK, we have to pay for like 3 or 4 different subscription services. And then can't even watch all the games. And the mindset behind it is, well, it means you go out and, you go out and to football matches or whatever. But try getting a ticket to a football match nowadays. Near enough impossible. It is. It's just, it's wild, isn't it? But yes, 3 p.m. Old Trafford. But tomorrow as well, we are going to have obviously morning view, full coverage of the press conference. Going to be a big one, certainly, as well, with all of the questions about Sancho, Anthony, Martinez, Amrabat, you name it, ownership. To be honest, you probably won't get a lot of information out of Erik ten Hag because historically you just don't at those press conferences. But that's going to be a fascinating one as well. I think we're probably going to get some reaction from Flex regarding this Sancho statement as well, coming out later today too. So there's plenty of stuff to be consuming when it comes to content here at United View as well. So if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner. As I mentioned, smash that like button. Let me close that poll right now. Just to wrap it up, 23 minutes ago, nearly 1,000 votes. And the question was, is this the beginning of the end for Jadon Sancho at Manchester United? 83% of you saying yes, 17% saying no. I would probably lean towards yes. Not to say that he can't come back, not to say that he will never play again for Manchester United, but it looks like it might be a bit of a long way back for Jadon Sancho, certainly. And long term, I think if an offer comes in January or an offer comes next summer, that might be it for Jadon Sancho. Anyway, guys, have a great afternoon, and I'll speak to you again very soon. I'm out of here. Peace.